Big Daddy to do an intro for me, or demand, so I'm just going to intro myself. Hi, I'm Brian Smith. I'm from Boston, and we're going to talk about lighting, and we're going to talk about how to make your lighting stand out without standing out. So, primarily, I do all my lighting in SoundSwitch, as a lot of people kind of know about me, but I hope that you guys will be able to take something from this, even if you're not using SoundSwitch, to kind of up your lighting game a little bit. So, I never wanted to be a lighting guy. Never did. I spent years as a touring corporate and a club sound engineer, and I understood the effect of good lighting on an event, but I didn't want to learn it because honestly, there's this rivalry between sound guys and lighting guys, but then like old sound guys actually usually end up becoming lighting guys, which I did. But anyways, I digress. But I knew I needed more than sound active for my light show. It just, sound active wasn't going to be good enough. In 2016, I was kind of resurrecting my DJ life. I've DJed off and on since I was in high school. But it was the right timing, and I found this article on Digital DJ Tips talking about SoundSwitch, this cool new tech that was coming out, and it synced with your Serato and ran your light show. I was like, that's what I want. So I was customer 24, my original beat-up SoundSwitch box. I love this thing. It actually just sits on a shelf. I don't actually use it anymore. But I was customer number 24, and I started looking around for other people that were using SoundSwitch, and I wasn't finding anyone. And I knew that I needed to find other people that wanted to learn this software and do the same thing. So I started this group, the SoundSwitch user group. When this photo was taken, there was 4,800 members. We're over 6,000 now. And this has become the official user group for SoundSwitch. And started putting out some YouTube content, trying to, generate something, because no one was talking about it. I reached out to Matt Watkins, the guy who invented SoundSwitch, said, hey, I started this group, maybe you should join. So he did. And that has led me down this path of having represented SoundSwitch at Mobile Beat, DJ Expo, talking to people like you and helping some of my industry peers with their lighting, that I'm blown away that I'm helping them, and you end up with Joe Bunn trying to make out with me. So I was hoping Joe would be in the room. I told him that this picture might make it in here. So anyways, I guess I'm a lighting guy now. So if you're in here, I'm assuming that you don't aspire to be this guy. Or this guy, although, some of you may be this guy. And for the love of God and everything that is fucking holy, not this guy. All right? So I'm probably going to piss some people off here on this next slide. My apologies. Actually, I'm not really sorry. But I'm going to piss you off. Or this guy. Now, if you look, there is a moving head there and like a regular power light there, and those are okay. But the rest of these lights, I am sorry, but they're party lights. They belong in bowling alleys and behind cover bands. These are not professional lights. We are professionals, and we should be doing better than this for ourselves and for our clients. So this presentation is brought to you by DG Idea Sharing, where they told me, my clients don't care what lights I use. And you know what? That's actually right, okay? Your clients don't care about what lights you use. But if you've been around for a while, you understand that we shouldn't be selling our gear. We shouldn't be selling how many songs are in our music library. We're selling the experience. We're selling the vibe. We're selling the outcome. And light is a powerful tool, when used right, to blend with your music and create that outcome that your clients want. So let's think about where we come from when we think about lighting and how we kind of got our start, right? I think most of us, our experience with, big lighting probably comes from going to our first concert, right? It's stage-based, lights the artist, the stage, and mostly ignores everything else. This is actually kind of more of a concert setup, right? But it's part of two things as to why we end up with looks like this, okay? Not a bad look, right? This isn't a bad look either. In fact, it has gravity stands. I love those things. I love the old school lights here. And something like this. And I'm not knocking any of these setups at all. But we've pretty much seen this setup or something like this a million times. And so have our venues, and so have our photographers, and so have our planners and our videographers. It's the same. Couples, clients, yeah, they may not have seen something like this, that's fine. But we're setting up like we're the rock stars on stage, and we're not the rock stars. So who is the rock star? Not this guy. Is it the bride? No, it's not. I mean, it is, but it's not. This is your backing band. The rock star is the party. We should be doing our best to enhance the guests, the party, the space around them, okay? So let's get a little creative. Moving lights. No, not these. So we'll go back to our friend here, right? How many of you have a setup that's similar to this, right? I mean, I do. I know I set up like this, and sometimes I still set up like this because it's what you have to do. So I'm not, again, not knocking this setup, but I want to start thinking outside the box a little bit. Why do we set up like this? The elders did. How many people had to use one of these at some point in their career, right? Terrible. Absolutely terrible, right? You had to power cycle your lights and all that. Terrible. These didn't exist. Wireless DMX dongles. Maybe you had an extension cord with a ton of plugs on it to help you out a little bit when you were doing lighting. But we got stuck in our ways and continued to just set up our lights close to us because running DMX is, that's a lot of cable. Running extension cords to run lights that didn't have DMX is a lot of cable. I mean, I remember doing my, first middle school dance in, 1998 in East Boston, and that was what we were doing, So I think we've gotten kind of lazy and stuck in our ways. So let's get a little aspirational here, right? The luxury market does something different. If you've ever gone to a really high-end event with a high-end lighting company, they do it very differently. So none of these are my own photos. These are all actually local venues from local lighting companies. And when you look at this, right, you don't see any light infrastructure in these photos unless you're looking very, very closely. If you look up in those chandeliers, they've got Chauvet easy pins up there lighting up all of these centerpieces, right? A lot of us have these. We can do this. Maybe not to this extent. And if we look at this, this room is very magenta, it's very purple, right? Where are those lights? If you look in the back, you can see kind of the telltale signs of uplighting along those curtains. But if you look at that, there's a band on that stage. There's no totems there. There's no lights there. If you look at the florals hanging over the dance floor, there's a lot of light coming from that because they hid them up in that floral. Again, that's aspirational, not something we can necessarily do. But I want you to kind of start thinking about this. And if you look in those windows, you can see the reflections of the lights that are really washing the room. Another example here, right? Another band up on stage, tons of people out there, or maybe not tons of people, but a decent number of people out there on the floor. But again, you can see the lights in here, but they're not where DJs set them up, right? They're all up high. And if you look closely, you can kind of see, the truss up there. And the higher we can get with our lights, the better our rooms are gonna look. Now, I do kind of want to give that, very careful safety thing. If you are not a rigger, don't be rigging, all right? If you want to start getting into hanging things off the ceilings, hire someone who knows what they're doing to help you. You do not want to drop a light on someone's head. So, this is a little bit more in reach. Now, in reality, I believe this is at the Four Seasons. This is probably a 6 or 7 figure, wedding. But this is a setup that's within our, within our reach. And it's a ceremony. But we have our uplights. The back, they look like Freedom, something or another's. The front on the stage there, I think those are the Astera AX5s. That's a pretty basic look. We all have uplights, right? Or we should all have uplights. If you don't have uplights, put them in your budget. And then we also kind of have the industry standard for the lighting world. Licos, Source 4s, ellipsoidals. Not a lot of DJs necessarily have these. Some people have them because they're really good for gobos. But there's something, we can have similar to this. And we're going to go in a little bit quicker, right? Nothing here is hung from the ceiling. All of these lights, they're on stands. So I'm sure that this is Schedule 40 pipe screwed into an Altman 50-pound base. If you look above you, there are ellipsoidals hanging above you. that's Schedule 40 pipe, okay? It's super heavy, pain in the ass to work with if you don't have trucks and all that. But we do have, gravity stands now. K&M makes a stand like this, where it's, 30-pound base plate and you can just screw the pole in, and you can do this, right? Easy. I think Chauvet also makes one. I would actually advise that you stay away from the Chauvet one for right now, but the gravity ones, the K&M ones, I think ProX makes one as well. So this is my last of my aspirational photos here. And we're going to break this one down a little bit. This one might actually be a DJ. So if we look at the floor, the breakup pad in here, that's a Chauvet gobo. I know that for a fact because I've been spending the entire last week programming Chauvet lights that are up behind you. It's something that you can probably do. So we definitely have our up lights. If you look on that beam next to the bar, you can see it. It's highlighted, shooting up the beam. But normally, I think a lot of people, when they walk into a room like this, they would look at the windows, they were like, all right, I gotta put an uplight on either side of the window. But that's not what this person did. Really have some uplights here, right? If you look closely, they laid them on these beams at 45-degree angles. You can see one all the way in the edge of the frame there. And now we've created a unique texture on the walls, and then you can see on the frames of the windows, we're getting cool light highlighting the frames of the windows there, okay? That's still uplighting, but it's just thinking a little bit outside the box. If we take a closer look at this, we've got some more Chauvet easy pins at the piers. And then those purple lights that are up along the beam there, those are probably some sort of magnetic light. I know Chauvet has, I think it's the H1 or something like that. You could even do this with an easy pin and put a gel on it, and kind of old school, but you can do it. Maybe a couple of pars up there, but in reality, this is not out of reach for any of us to do with the lighting that's in our stock. All you need is the lights and a ladder. And I'll tell you, a lot of these venues, if you ask nicely, they'll give you the ladder. So let's move our lights, right? Wireless DMX is your friend, right? If you're using, I don't care if you're using Chauvet uplights or you're using, Chinese, generic uplights, they pretty much all have wireless DMX built into them. And one of the things that, I tell people to do, and it's always like, oh, I didn't realize you can do that. You can use that as your transmitter. You don't even need to have that antenna anymore. You can plug right into that and it transmits for you. Or you can use it to get DMX other places because it's wireless. They all have the outputs on them. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute. If you move your moving head somewhere that's not next to you, plug them into one of your wireless uplights and you're taken care of. When you walk into a room though, I want you to think about the focal points of the room, right? It's probably you. Unless they put you in a corner or put you in a balcony, which is why I don't work in those venues. The head table and the dance floor. And if you're really lucky, you've got the head table, the dance floor, and you. Now, in the audio world, if we need extra sound, right? Are we putting more speakers next to us and shooting them out? No, we're using fill speakers. We're putting them in other places in the room. Like I showed you in that picture that was all blue. The lights are around the room, shining into the center. You don't notice they're there, but they have the effect. Minimalism is your friend, okay? And your moving heads, they move. They don't need to be next to you to light up the dance floor. We could put moving heads over there and light up the dance floor. So why are we putting them next to us? We don't need to look like this. Although, if I was a trucker in Japan, this is very much how my truck would look. So a couple of renderings here, right? This is kind of based on my own setup. I use a tool called Capture. It's a lighting visualization program. And I just kind of quickly rendered this. But I mean, you can do something like this, right? I've got some pixel tubes in the back there, uplights. I've got 3 Zs. I've got some moving washes there. And you can have a very dramatic, first dance look with something like this. Or you can set a vibe, right? So let's talk about light fixtures here. We're going to come back to talking about moving stuff and all that, but let's talk about light fixtures. Moving heads, right? Spots and washes are your best. Most of us have these. These are spots. We don't have any moving washes, actually. Moving washes are actually the easiest. There's less attribute cues. You don't have to worry about gobos. But a lot of people love a beam fixture. Except there's one problem with a beam fixture. It's made for aerial effects. right? With a spot, you can put a gobo on something, right? You can put a spot up. I don't have any gobos showing right now, but with a beam, they're very, very tiny gobos, and they're made to be in the air. And they don't look that great. They kind of look like lasers when you start putting them on people on the ground. So if you're not running haze, probably stay away from the beams, unless you get something like there's hybrid fixtures. Chauvet Hybrid 140 SR is a good example of that, where you can kind of do everything. Expensive, but a Swiss Army knife. This should be pretty self-explanatory. You know, if you had nothing else, and I've told people, oh, I don't have lights, I don't know what I should get, and they want to go and get a gig bar. Like, no. Go out and buy yourself a power light. A couple of power lights, start there. You know, these guys up here, they're 150 bucks or something like that, maybe 200 bucks. Get a couple of those, and that's how you start building a good lighting system. We talked about Chauvet Easy Pins. I picked up some of these this year, and I love these. They don't need necessarily DMX. This actually doesn't have DMX, but they're great for doing that little accent light or shining some light on a bar or something like that. And they can really be a good foundation for your light show. And I'm going to shout out Nate Nelson, who I don't think is actually in here right now. Pixel tubes. They're the hot light right now. Everyone wants them. Everyone, if they don't have them, they want them. The most popular one is the Astera AX1s. Chauvet just came out with some. I use ones that are called Tiki. I don't necessarily. Todd has them. I don't necessarily recommend them because they take a lot of work to get them to work right. But these things, these lights are incredible, right? When I first saw this picture, when Nate posted it, I was amazed because all this is just hung up, but like no one's doing something like that, right? That's done with fishing wire. They're super light, right? Yes, be careful with rigging, but when you're rigging something that's that light and they can go anywhere, it's great. I mean, when I do a tent wedding, right? We'll go and we'll zip tie them to the posts in the tent. You just have to think outside the box with them. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with these. I love these. This is an example from one of my events, right? This is one of my favorite venues that I work in. It's a restaurant. It's actually just down the street from here. If you're looking for a good Italian restaurant, the place is called SRV. I really, really recommend it. They're really good. But, you can put these lights anywhere. This was one of the first events I did at SRV with these lights. The windows behind me, metal, magnet mounted, right? I don't have any stands getting in my way, except for the disco ball, but I mean, who doesn't love a disco ball? It's just getting creative with them. So let's talk about programming your show. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, all right? Everyone loves a flashy and blinky light show. But you know what? It's kind of chintzy and a little bit too much. And I'm guilty of it. I did that for a long time, but I've kind of started to change my ways, and I want to talk about what I'm doing now. So we want to think about color, flow, dynamics, and texture. First in color, right? Basic color theory. We're going to run through this quick. This could be an entire presentation on its own. So red, passionate, energized. Orange, energized, enthusiastic. Yellow, happy and spontaneous. Green, optimistic and refreshed. But it is terrible for lighting, terrible lighting for photos and video, because it makes you all look like Martians, or it makes you look like you're sick. And no one at their wedding wants their photos to make them look like they're sick. So if you're doing uplighting and they want green uplighting, unless you're doing like a Wizard of Oz themed event or something like that, tell them no, because it's going to make you look bad when their photos look terrible. Blue, safe and relaxed. Purple, creative, royal, wealth. Pink, playful and romantic. White, minimalism and simplicity. But you've got variations on white, right? You can have cool white, which is very sterile, clinical, and then warm white, which is more inviting. So I'm going to give you guys a hack here. This app is called Coolers, or Coolers, I'm going to call it Coolers. Your best kept secret for color theory. Scan the QR code, you can get it. You can use it on a computer, you can use it on your phone. I use this for picking my colors, all right? You can enter in a color, you can pick it, and it will generate complementary colors. And so you can pick analogous, monochromatic, complementary, triadic, all kinds of weird stuff. The one thing that you do have to do is you can go in and set this so it shows you the RGB values. And then usually what I do is the little 3 dots on the bottom, you go in there and it says refine palette. I go in there and I bump the saturation all the way up. And then whatever values it gives me, that's what I use. Because this is technically more designed for graphic design, but it works really, really well. So flow, how do our lights move? Okay, are they fast, slow, static? When and why? What are we trying to achieve? So often I'll see people post videos of their light show. They're like, oh, look at how awesome my light show is. And their moving heads are moving at the speed of sound, just back and forth and everything like that. You're gonna make people fucking dizzy. Don't do that. All right? And excuse my language. I mean, if you're from Boston, you're not offended. If you're not from Boston, well, this is how we talk. Yes, Terry knows that. So, we don't need to be all over the place with our lights, okay? There is, and I'm going to talk about this I'll talk about it now. There is something called strobe-induced vertigo. It's real. I know people who have gotten it. I know people who have gotten it at a very recent conference that I just got back from, because stuff is blinking too fast and it makes you dizzy and it gives you a headache. You know what that does? That makes people leave your dance floor. Makes people leave your event. And we don't want that, right? We don't want an empty dance floor, we want packed dance floors, right? Every DJ can pack a dance floor. But don't make your lights scare people away. Dynamics, bright or dim, rhythmic or static, right? Same thing. Flashing lights all the time gets old. So think differently about it. Your lights don't need to flash all the time, or at all. Texture. Gobos are a blessing and a curse. Some of them are cool, some of them suck. They kind of look bad when you put them on a white dress, so make sure you're saving that for when people are actually dancing, okay? If your moving heads have prisms, use them, okay? Spread that light out, grab more texture, put texture on the ceiling. A lot of the times for me, if I'm doing the walk-in look at my weddings, I use the ADJ Focus Spot 3Zs. They have a star gobo, and I put the star gobo on a prism and a nice little rotate above the dance floor. Looks great. Everyone loves it. And if you have Chauvet lights, you have seen this gobo. Why? Why? Exactly, right? I mean, why does Chauvet do this? The only time you should ever use this gobo is if you're doing lights for a metal band. Otherwise, get rid of it, throw it in the trash. All right, so putting it all together, right? So we'll start talking a little SoundSwitch more here. Auto loops are where it's at. Very often I will have people come in and tell me, oh, I want to auto script my entire library. No, don't do that, because you're going to end up with a boring-ass light show, and everything's going to do the same, and it's going to blink and change, and it's going to be stupid. You want to build a foundation. You want to build a good scene. So whether you're using SoundSwitch, or Show Express, or Chances, or you're fancying using MA2, you have to think in, lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. I know, right? Don't be flashing all the time, right? Think in energy levels rather than genre. So default for SoundSwitch, they give you your chill, hip hop, upbeat, dance music. I don't really do that. I also want you guys to think about composing in layers, right? So foundationally, probably your basic lights, no matter what, that you're gonna have in almost all your events are your uplights, right? When you're thinking of designing a scene, do you want everything flashing? No, I hope you don't want everything flashing after I've just talked about that. But you want to start to have something that is consistent. So for me, that's usually my uplights, but sometimes it'll be my movers, and then my uplights will flash. Compose in the layers. So this is kind of how I do mine, all right? So we'll start at bank 4 in SoundSwitch, basic looks, all right? Walk in, cocktail hour, a vibey set. My uplights, I keep them static, one color. Maybe I do a color fade. Their intensity is always 100%. They're maxed out. They're not flashing. Movers, I'll usually do one position, maybe a prism. I'm not using any movement effects, maybe some slow rotation. I mean, this is kind of a basic look right here. If I have the pixel tubes, static or color fade, no chases. My basic dance. So I use this for older music, early dance set. You know, grandma's out there, grandma doesn't want to be at a rave. Again, static or color fades. I will use the 8 to 16 bar timing on my movers, so it's a slow move. Again, probably just one gobo, no effects. Pixel tubes, very similar. Upbeat dance. This is your general dance set. This is like where you're at. You know, the last two I usually do 128 bars. I'll do 64 bars on these next two. And the reason is, I don't necessarily feel that I need to have my entire light look change, you know, for every verse and chorus. I want it to kind of be a consistent feel throughout the song. If you're using SoundSwitch and you're quick mixing, you know, one song is going to have one look. As soon as you fade into the next song, you'll get a different look. It's perfect. You don't need to have 5 different looks in one song. So, actually, let me go back here. So, I said on pixel tubes, color or intensity chase or color palette timing variation. You can do this with your uplights as well, and this is what that looks like. So what I do here is I just highlight the whole track. When you are in the side here on the left side, you have color palettes, and I'll drag and drop them and just change the timing variation throughout them. So on these are my pixel tubes. I'm running them, you know, I think I'm running 5 pixels on these, or 5 groups of pixels. Just drag it and drop it. It's a cool effect. And you've seen this photo already, but now we'll explain it. It comes out looking like this. So I love this photographer. This guy, Zach Wolf, he's a local photographer. Actually, he just moved to Florida. But you get, you know, when you get someone who's a rock and roll photographer to do a wedding, you get really cool photos, and I really like his stuff. But you can see with the movement there kind of how those pixel tubes came out. Energetic dance, faster BPMs, EDM, you know, color chase, palette variation on your uplights, have your positions go ham for a little bit, you know, 2 to 3 positions on your moving wash, chase timings, you know, quarters, 16, 32, have at it. So one of the things that I'll do, right, is some people are like, oh, I want to control everything. You don't need to control everything, you know, let your auto loops do the work for you. So when I'm playing, I have my control 1 next to me. I can control my banks. So I just hit the bank. I know exactly which bank I want to be in based on the music I'm playing. When I'm in the EDM and we have a breakdown, I might switch to that first bank, the bank, you know, bank 4, that, you know, kind of walk in, or bank 3, this chill dance, just to kind of bring it down. But if you build things out in energy levels, you don't have to think about building a build-up or doing any of the, you know, oh, I got to make a breakdown look. You don't have to do that. You just have to go to the bank that has the lower energy level, and it does the job for you. Static looks, uplighting, just kind of want to get into this real quick. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I've seen it a million times, is when people have moving heads out and they're blacked out, but they're still moving all over the place while their uplights are static. This is how you stop that. Include them into your look. Keep them black, keep their intensity down, and set a position. So I have mine on set on position 1. They're going to stay in one place, they're not going to move on you. You're not going to distract people by your moving heads that aren't lit up moving. First dance looks, you know, that's always something that you can do. Some people are like, oh, I want to program my first dance. You don't really need to program it. Just get some nice warm white, put it on the dance floor, put it through the room. Slow dance, this is actually a really useful one. I only recently started doing this. If you're going to do a slow dance, a lot of times your light shows aren't going to look good no matter what you do, so set yourself a look for that. Pink, right? We talked about that earlier. Romantic, right? We're doing a slow dance. Maybe people are going to get it on later on after they leave your wedding, right? And you're going to help facilitate that. Make it pink. Do some kind of variations on the intensity on your uplights. Give some more texture to the room and to the space. Some other things that you can think about in static looks is have some overrides built in. So you can black out your movers, black out your uplights, black out your pixel tubes, whatever, just to give yourself a little bit more variation if you want to play with it while you're DJing. So thank you guys.